I've been through many cameras that I've at one point or another called my favorite camera. My film camera, my Spotmatic SP, for a long time was my favorite camera. But I think that this little camera right here might actually become my new favorite camera. It's been reshaping my photography in a way that I didn't expect, the whole workflow has changed, and I want to talk about why in this video. Now, because I'm using this camera for travel photography for the most part, or just leaving it in a bag that I'm going to be bringing with me everywhere so that I just happen to have a camera with me, the great thing about this camera is that it's really small. But it's not just that it's really small, it doesn't give up any functionality or image quality when it gets to be smaller than something like my A7IV. So it's still a really compact setup, especially if you're using the right lens. And this is just a cheaper version of the Fujifilm 27mm f2.8 lens. And so basically this is a 40mm prime, and I've really loved that focal length, and I'll make a whole separate video about that lens at some point. But one of the great things about it still being able to change lenses, even though it's so compact, is that I can still throw on my bigger, heavier vintage lenses on if I want to. One of the other things is that even though it's so small, you still have all of the buttons and dials that I would want to have that my A7IV would give me. It's giving me the control over the camera that I need to do what I want to with it, which is really important to me because I've used pocket style digital cameras before to try to have something that's always in my bag, but it's just never really worked as well because I can't quite easily get the full manual controls and I can't easily access all of those controls, whereas this has the quick function menu and all of the custom buttons and all of the dials that I could possibly need, which is really helpful because it allows me to shoot as if I'm shooting on something like my A7IV in a smaller and lighter body and still give me a lot of the end image quality that I need. And so that's going to be things like this physical shutter speed dial right here, physical aperture dial obviously on the lens, and then you get all of the buttons on the back that you can actually bind to whatever function that you want, which is really cool to see. And then also you get things like the drive mode dial on the left side of the viewfinder, as well as an exposure comp dial on the right side of the shutter button. One other small thing is that these dials that are on the front and back are actually able to be pressed as if they're a button, which gives you even more function buttons that you can bind to other things. So that's one of the things that I just really like about this camera, is that it's really small, but it retains all of that workhorse sort of functionality, that it gives me all of the buttons, the dials, and it gives me the control over the camera that I still want to have, but in a form factor that's this small. So something else that I really love about this camera is the film simulation settings. And this is one of the big things that drew me to buy this camera in the first place, is that the idea that I could do just JPEG shooting instead of RAW and JPEG shooting, or just RAW files like I most always do, is usually just uncompressed RAW. It's usually what I'm shooting. But with this camera, the ability to do just JPEGs or JPEG plus RAW and use the JPEGs for things has been really wonderful, because the JPEGs are at a point where they actually are close to what I would try to edit it to. There's a lot of customizability that it allows you to do to set up these film simulations, and this really allows you to nail down the look that you want in camera without having to do nearly as much editing. There are a lot of photos I've taken with this camera that it just looks better on the JPEG. The RAW file could maybe be edited to a same place as the JPEG, or maybe slightly better, but not without a lot of editing. For those random photos that I don't really care about as much, I know they're not portfolio photos or whatever, to be able to just shoot JPEG to save storage space and to save so much time on the workflow end, it really is a freeing process, because editing is one of the most boring parts of the photography process for me, and so it can be really unmotivating to go out and shoot and enjoy the shooting process and come back and have to sort through and organize and edit all of these photos before I can even do anything with them. Now, I have been putting some time into editing the RAW files, and I think I've finally gotten it to a point where I can edit the RAW files and get a look that I like a little bit better than the JPEGs, and I've been working on making some presets for myself in Lightroom to help me with that, because they handle definitely a little bit differently than my Sony RAW files. This is especially helpful because I like to make photo albums that store a lot of my work and just document my life over the years, and these photos that I take are not always necessarily portfolio images that I'm gonna want to spend 15 minutes editing. And so when I have 100 photos I'm trying to get printed, if I spend 5 minutes on every photo, it's just going to take me way too long to get through that and eventually print them and put them in the album. Over my recent trip to Washington, D.C., which you've probably been seeing a lot of photos and footage from, I had a lot of photos from that trip where I actually know that's probably going to go in my portfolio, or that's one of the best images I took on the trip. And those images, those are the types of images that I want to go out of my way and find the raw file and spend time editing it. I want to do that for those images. I think they're worthwhile. They're the images I'm more passionate about. But for every other photo that's probably worth keeping, but it's not a portfolio-worthy image, I'm just not as invested in spending a ton of time editing that. And so if I can get that great JPEG right out of camera, it helps my process so much. And because I'm not super motivated to do editing, I'm not as big of a fan of sitting at my computer. I'd rather actually go out and do photography. Editing's just not my favorite part of the process. It helps keep me motivated when I'm feeling more burnt out on my photography. The idea that I can just go shoot JPEGs and not have to edit just makes it a little bit harder for me to burn out on photography and being creative in general. So this is the Fujifilm XT-10. I've really loved this camera, and I'm going to continue to use it for the foreseeable future. It's going to become pretty much my main photo camera. It is definitely my favorite camera, and I think by now you can probably understand why. But with that said, thank you for watching, and have a great day.